And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I think I have the agenda up shared on the screen, and that is also linked in the chat. If you could please open it up, we are going to want to interact with all the different resources and links that are in there for our meeting today. And if you could please sign in up at the top, I'd appreciate that. Helps just to know who is all here, and sometimes I have to get back with people and things like that. So if you could take a minute to get signed in, I would really appreciate that. Below that, I did have a couple people this morning that were asking about the monthly communication. So I do send out a monthly communication. I have the most recent issue is linked there. And I also have the button to subscribe. So if you do not get my monthly communication, you can take a look to see if that looks like something that might be interesting for you. It is split a little bit between some compliance stuff, some continuous improvement stuff, and some state and federal program stuff. So if you're involved in any of those things, it might be a good idea to sign up. So you can check that out and then hit subscribe if that's something that you're interested in. And before we get started, just wanted to see if there's anything that is kind of a hot topic that we might want to add to our agenda. So you can kind of maybe scroll through the agenda and take a look at some of the things we're going to talk about. If there's something on there that isn't there that you'd like to maybe try to touch base about today, I'd be glad to add it to the agenda. I'm not going to say that I might have the answer, but we have 28 smart people in the room that hopefully we'd be able to figure something out. So if there is anything, just you can put that into chat or unmute and let me know. Give everybody a second to take a peek through the dashboard. Hillary is asking about the electronic signature policy. Let's add that to the agenda. Let's see. Yes, it doesn't get much more exciting than that, truly. Let's see here. Where would be a good spot for that? I think it might need its own spot. So why don't we put it under Title 1? So electronic, I can spell electronic signature policy. Okay, yes, we will definitely talk about the electronic signature policy today. Anything else that we'd like to add? And you're welcome to unmute anytime throughout if you have questions, or if there's something new that comes up, or you have a good resource that you want to share that is germane to whatever we're talking about. This is a very informal meeting. You're welcome to unmute or just throw that in chat anytime. All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump into things. The first thing that I want to talk about is MyKIP. And I'm actually going to go over a few things, and I'm going to have us get into some breakout rooms to chat for a few minutes because, well, I'll get into all that. First, I'm just going to start off with to talk about the collaboration series. So this is our third year with the collaboration series, and we are 3 of the 4 sessions are done as of now. I wanted to pop the dashboard open just to let everybody know that if you haven't been participating, it's all everything that we have been working on is here. So we've had February 1st, February 15th, and March 1st are done. March 15th is our upcoming date, and the whole everything from the very beginning is all in here. So going back to February 1st, the video for the full day is in there. All of the resources that we had, the presentation. So it's pretty easy to participate asynchronously, or you could kind of pop around to the video to the section that that you might be thinking about. But we have every resource that we go through and talk about in the video is all linked here. So it's a pretty great resource. So that was everything from February 1st, where we really kind of got into what is continuous improvement. This is kind of like the 101 section. How do you form a team? What are some of the things that need to be done before you even start thinking about writing your plans? How to use the data, what kind of data to collect. So there's all kinds of really great stuff. And we kind of walk through all those different pieces. Then we get into the system and get everything. We do a full walkthrough of the whole system throughout the first 3 sessions. So Session 2, we really got into root cause analysis. and writing our goals. Session 3, we broke into a couple of different groups. We had I had a group that continued with the 101 session where we got into MyKIP and just understood how to do strategies, activities, how to get things into your portfolio, what it means to monitor. And then we had 2 districts that were there that that gave practical examples. And so if you want to kind of hear from Dearborn and Fruitport, they were there that day and talked through their continuous improvement process and specifically how they're monitoring the implementation of their plans. Again, all the resources for everything are there for everything, and the videos for all the sessions are there. So I'm looking forward to our last session is on March 15th, and we've been collecting information from our participants from the previous 3 sessions to make up some breakouts for the 15th. And so there's going to be a variety of smaller breakouts and presentations on the 15th. So really looking forward to that. And if anybody would like to come to that, I think I have the registration in here. Maybe. Looks like I don't. I will add the registration link. It's free. It just takes a minute to register, and then you'll get the Zoom link emailed out to you. So just put this in here to remind myself to put in that registration link. So I will get that registration link added in case anybody's interested in getting that. If you don't want to register and know that you can't make it that day, this link is going to have all of the videos and everything for all of the presentations that are done that day. So you can always come back to this, even if you're not able to make it that day or can't get registered. Wanted to share a really great resource that when we shared this at our PD, it was a big hit. And it really kind of helps to, as we're moving into this concept of all of our active goals needing to be in MyKIP, that it really provides some detail or some ways that you can do that. And Frank, was this out of Calhoun? Do you remember? Yes. Okay. So this came out of Calhoun ISD, and I think it's a really great representation. So what we're going to be talking about next is this fact that we have to have all of our active goals in MyKIP this year. And so what they tried to show in this is that there's lots of ways to do that. And there's not just one way. Nobody's going to come in and say you need to have 3 goals, or nobody's going to come in and say you need to have an academic goal and a non-academic goal. We really do have the flexibility in the system to make the plans the way that make the most sense for the context of our districts. And so what this does for us is it shows us many ways that we can do that. So we kind of start off that here is an example of a district that just had 1 goal, and then how they split that goal up into the different strategies to be able to kind of cover all of the different things that they're trying to put in place for their district. So I'm not going to go through every single page of the document, but just going to kind of quickly show that this is an example of if you had 1 goal, how you might set things up with strategies and activities. Then they get in to say, okay, well, maybe we want to actually split this out into 2 goals. And so they have a rigorous and well-rounded education, so something more academic focused, creating a safe and healthy learning environment, something more non-academic focused, and then how they might break that out with different strategies to cover all of the different things that they're working on for their district. So it goes through and it gives you an example of 4 goals, it gives you an example of 5 goals, gives you another example of 4 goals, but there's different ways to set it up, and it's kind of all around the same information, and just being able to show it in different ways and engage with it in different ways that are going to make sense for your team and your district. So the main takeaway out of this is when we engage in this conversation about all active goals next, I really want everybody to know that there's many ways to do that, and you do not have to have some cookie cutter mindset moving into it where it's like, oh, I guess we better have our ELA goal and our math goal and our attendance goal. Maybe you will end up with an ELA goal, a math goal, and an attendance goal if that's what makes sense for your district, and those are all the goals that you're working on. But there's many other ways to set it up, and I think that this resource really gives a lot of variety and options about how you can do that. So I wanted to talk about this whole concept of all active goals, and we are going to get into some breakouts for everybody to have a little bit of a conversation around this. So I want to give a little bit of history on this, and so I'm going to go back to a couple of memos that came out from MDE. So this first memo came back all the way back in May of 2002. So what this memo was this was the first time that MDE kind of articulated what was going to be required for MyKIP. And so this was when for that 22-23 school year. So the year that when we were writing our plans last year, the plans we were writing for this year, where the requirement was really we just needed to have a goal in MyKIP. And we needed to be trying the system out. We needed to be putting things in there and getting used to the system, and we needed to have an active goal in our portfolio. And this was again the first time that they said that for the 23-24 school year, so the plans that we are working on to write and update and adjust now, that we're going to put in place for the 23-24 school year, this is when they said that we were going to need to have all of our active goals in there. And there wasn't a lot of detail on what that means in this memo, but it was kind of giving us a heads up back then that, yeah, it's okay for the 22-23 school year to just have that one goal in your portfolio, but we're going to need to have all of our active goals in there for 23-24. So that's kind of the first memo that I want to take a look at. And then the second memo that came out more recently, just a little over a month ago now, goes into a lot more detail about what is going to be required in our continuous improvement plans. And really, what this boils down to is that for our consolidated application, we're going to need to be able to show that the ways that we want to fund different things with our federal funds in the consolidated application are going to need to tie in some way, shape, or form to our continuous improvement plans. And the reason for this is because we need to be able to show a need for the way that we're spending our funds. And if we're able to tie those to our MyKIP plans, then we can definitely prove that there was a needs assessment that was completed and that those funding sources are tied to some sort of broader district goals. And so that's kind of the main crux of this whole all active goals piece is we're going to need to tie the funding that we're requesting back to our continuous improvement plans in some way. And what MDE is trying to do in the MyKIP team specifically is to give us some different ways to be able to do this. And so currently we all have at least one active goal in MyKIP. And that just means that you have a goal that's in your portfolio that you're currently monitoring and working on. And you can have many active goals. So I have some districts that have 3, 4 or more even active goals in MyKIP right now. And if they are able to tie all of the funding that they need back to those active goals, they really don't need to engage in some of these new ways, or I guess there's one new way to kind of do that. So active goals are things that we're currently working on. We're monitoring them. We're putting strategies into place and those sorts of things. Maintenance goals are things that maybe we've met our outcomes for, but it's something that we want to keep in our plans to make sure that we're continuing to move forward with and continuing to monitor the implementation of and continuing to fund. And so those are maintenance goals. They're not necessarily something that we're actively pursuing now, but maybe they have some things in there we're trying to fund. You can move those from active to maintenance. The new one, the new kid on the block, I guess, for lack of a better word, is this idea of limited maintenance. And this is where you can take some goals that were previously approved in assist. So cast your mind back 3 years. If you had some things that were previously in assist you can actually skip the whole first part of MyKIP. You can skip the data discovery and the root cause analysis and challenge statements, and you can jump straight to the goal area and enter the goal strategies and activities that previously were in assist. And what this is for is to try to just efficiently help us get any kind of goals, strategies, and activities into the plan that were previously approved that we would like to continue funding. And so that's kind of the new piece here. So I wanted to kind of pause for just a minute. We do have at least 3, but maybe 4 folks from OES on this call today. And I wanted to pause just to see if what I've kind of talked about so far made sense, and if there might be anything that you might want to add to what we've talked about so far.
Well, so this is Shelley. Hi, everyone. Eventually, the strategies in MyKIP will link to Nexus, and we'll have a drop-down option for you in Nexus to select a strategy that's already been built in. That is not going to happen for next year. We're not there. We will just be relying on previous approvals that we've, approved in the past, and the detail that you write in your budgets. We'll be paying attention to those. And then if we need to, digging in to MyKIP, if we need to. So the hope is we've taught you over the last couple of years how to write details in such a way that expresses the actual need and use for that strategy or activity. And then it's easier for us to be able to approve and not have to ask you quite so many questions about what the need is. Where did this come from? Why are you paying for this? That kind of thing. So that's what we've been told up to this point. So thanks, Dave.
Frank or Cheryl, Michelle, Sandro, any other thoughts?
Well stated, Shelley. Nothing to add.
All right. So I did want to kind of take a minute to give everybody a little bit of time for some processing around this. And I'm going to put a couple of prompts in our agenda here. The first prompt is just to really think about where are you now with your MyKIP plans? Do you feel like the way as written right now, they're representing all active goals? So that is going to be prompt 1. And then prompt 2 is to just kind of think about what questions do you have either around what your plans need to look like this year, and then also what kind of questions might you have around getting the consolidated application approved. So I'm going to put that in here. So when I say what questions you have around getting the consolidated app approved, that's kind of specific to this topic of connecting the things that you're asking and requesting funding for, connecting that to your continuous improvement plans. And I do have a document for you to capture those questions on. I've used this in a couple other places, and so there's already a couple of questions on here from some other times that I've used this for some other purposes. So when you're in your group and talking about that, if there's some questions that come up, if you could get them added to this sheet, then I would be able to take this and have a conversation with either the MyKIP team or with Office of Educational Supports. So as you're in there, if some questions come up, if you could use this document to get those recorded, I would really appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and I'm going to make some breakouts, and then I think we'll probably spend probably just about, I'd say probably less than 10 minutes, probably like 8 or 9 minutes in the breakout rooms. So I'm going to try to make the breakouts. So we are back after the breakout rooms. And one thing, I guess, to just kind of wrap up this section on MyKIP that I guess I really wanted to convey is, if you feel like using the regular your regular goals in assist, using your active goals, excuse me, I just said assist. Wow, I've been talking about assist in MyKIP a lot. In MyKIP, if with your active goals, you feel like you have things covered, that represents what your plan is, that you're able to tie all your funding to the strategies, activities, and goals that you have there, you do not have to engage in any way, shape, or form with this limited maintenance situation. So if you feel like you're all up to date with the way that your plan's written, you're covered. You don't have to do anything with the all active goals or with the limited maintenance goals. So the place to use those limited maintenance goals is if you have had things that have been previously approved that maybe aren't already covered in your MyKIP plan in some way, shape, or form. That's when you can go back to assist, pull up your old assist, which should be linked in MyKIP. It's going to be a PDF, and then do that limited maintenance process to get those goals added. So it's not a one-click situation. I do have the directions here for how to do that. You'll have to go in, you'll have to basically on one screen, you're going to have your old assist plan. On the other screen, you're going to have MyKIP, and you're going to have to go through, make a goal, set end targets. Any of the strategies that you wanted to move over are going to have to be in the strategy bank. So hopefully they're already there. If they're not, you're going to have to add them. So it's not like a one click, it just pulls your assist over. You definitely have to think about it and go through the whole getting all those things added. So I'm not going to go into all the details on that. I have the things there. This was a little bit more conceptual, really just trying to think, are our plans pretty good the way they are right now? Is it covering all the active things that we're working on? And are we going to be able to tie our funding to it? If the answer is yes, you don't need to do anything with the limited maintenance goals. If the answer is no, then you can either go back to assist and see if you can add a limited maintenance goal, or you're going to have to go through the whole MyKIP process to add more goals or more strategies or activities so that you're able to make that connection to your funding sources. So I think enough said on that. We're going to have to work through this and just kind of do the work and see how things go as we move along. And just like Shelley said, in the meantime, if you have questions about it, just make sure that you're reaching out to your OES rep. And the MyKIP team is really helpful too. They answer emails. Ben and Terry both answer emails really well. So, all right, going to move on to our next agenda item. Wanted to dig into a few things about Title I. And I wanted to talk about this memo that came out last month. So I'm going to pop this open. And this is all about, it's about census poverty and basically how the data that they're communicating about in this memo impacts your Title I funding. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the memo, and then I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the Title I allocation works. I think it's good for us to understand this so that we can just know for ourselves why the funding looks the way that it does, but also be able to explain it to others in our district. Why is it that such and such a district gets so much more money than our district, and that sort of thing. And so I think I'm going to give a little primer on this, and then hopefully that will help to help everybody understand things a little bit better. And I'd also be glad to hear from anybody else that has some background with looking at this real closely. So anyway, this memo comes out every year. It usually comes out at the end of January or the beginning of February, and it basically says that that the USED used some census data to determine how many students, so K-12 students, that they would estimate would be in your district, and of those students, how many of them are living in poverty. And so I think we all know that our Title I funding is based off of poverty data. What I think that a lot of people don't know is that it has nothing to do with your student counts or any kind of reporting you do through MSDS or anything like that. It's all based off of census data. And so the census is only completed every 10 years, as we know. And so what is done in the meantime is the Census Bureau, working with USAID, runs an algorithm every year and says, if we did the census this year, this is what we think the data would show us. And so they run that every year, and they take a couple other things into account, and then they put this out and they say, you know, you should really go and look at the data and see if you think that it's accurate. And then they say, let us know if you think that it's not accurate. So there's really only one thing that you can actually say when you call them, though, is to say that you think that they drew your district boundaries wrong. So you can't call and say, hey, I think you guys are way off on these numbers. I think we actually have a lot more kids in poverty than what you think. They don't care. The only thing that they're going to care about is that your district boundaries are drawn correctly. And so I have tried to put in an appeal before on behalf of one of our districts. They didn't even say no. They just didn't say anything. So the appeal process, I don't have a lot of faith in it. And there's really only one thing that you can appeal, and that is your district boundaries. So they actually have a way that you can view what they consider to be your district boundaries. And it might be worth going to this, finding your district and taking it to your transportation director and saying, do these boundaries match up to what you think our boundaries match up as? And if they don't, well, then you can try to take that next step, but I wouldn't have much faith that you're going to get much out of it. So knowing that the numbers that you see are probably going to be the only numbers that you have to work with, the way that I always do this is I pop open the 2021 data, and then I pop open the 2020 data. So you'll see that the data, this is the most recent data. So it's always 2 years behind when it comes out. So 2021 is the most recent, and then 2020 is the year previous. So what I usually like to do is I like to just take these and kind of look at them side by side and do a comparison. So I'm just going to go to my favorite district in the whole state, Fruitport. So I'm just going to pull up Fruitport over here, and I'm going to pull up Fruitport over here. And so what we have here is what it shows is for this year, where here's our 2021 data, they're saying that we have 323 students in poverty and 3,000 students that are 5 to 17 in the district. Okay, 3,309, which would give us a poverty percentage of 9.76%. So then I look over here to 2020, and the population at that time, they said was 3,200. So the population went up by about 100, and then the poverty was 292. And so our poverty went up by about 30 students. So I look over at the percentage, and over in 2020, it says 9.1%. And for 2021, it says 9.76%. So basically what we're seeing is there wasn't a big change for this district, but that the poverty percentage did go up a little bit. And those numbers then are used to populate our data that we see on the on the MDE page, where it talks about program allocations. And so I just pulled up this year's Title I, and so those numbers then will pull over into next year's allocations data. So this is last year's, so you'll see that the numbers don't match up, but this is last year's data. And so they basically take the things from those columns and they plug them into your Title I eligible count and census enrollment count, and then that gives that poverty percentage. So I just wanted to reiterate that that poverty percentage has nothing to do with how many free or reduced lunch students you have or any numbers that you submit through MSDS. It all comes through that census poverty algorithm. So once the numbers get plugged in here, then based off of what your poverty percentage is, you're going to get a hold harmless amount. And that hold harmless amount, that hold harmless percentage does a couple of different things. One of the things that we usually say is it's your, when you get your initial allocation the next year, they're going to use that hold harmless amount to give you, to provide that initial allocation. And so if you received $100,000 and you had a 90% hold harmless, then it's likely that your amount that you are going to get for your initial allocation would be around $90,000. So that's one of the things that the hold harmless amount does, or percentage does. The other thing that it does is these numbers won't go down by any more than that hold harmless percentage. And so I have a video that I have linked that explains that in a little bit more detail. But that's how you can have a district in our county. Muskegon Public Schools and Mona Shores are relatively similar size, but according to the census data, Muskegon Public is much larger. And so from an enrollment standpoint, they're very similar. But because of that hold harmless amount, over time, that can only go down very little. So if you had a district that had previously very high enrollment or high population that that declined quickly over just a few years or over 10 years, it's only going to go down by that hold harmless amount each year. And so that's how you end up with some big disparities in funding between districts that may be of the same size and sometimes even the same demographic makeup. So I have a whole video that explains all of that, but that's kind of what that hold harmless is all about. But essentially the basic grant is made up of really just kind of looking at these different numbers and what the poverty percentage is. And there's not straight math to this. So it's not like you can divide this number by some number over here and you're going to get your answer. There are a lot of other factors that go into it. But everybody, if you have Title I buildings, you're going to get your basic grant. And then there's 3 sub-grants there, the concentration grant, targeted grant, and EFIG. And those are all based off of your poverty percentage and some other pieces with this. And so you'll see that some of our districts receive that and some don't. And most of that has to do with poverty percentage, but it also will combine with poverty percentage and I think your whole harmless amount in some cases. So you can see some of our districts didn't get the concentration grant, but all of our districts in our county got the targeted and EFIG grants. So then this last one actually is just a straight addition problem. If you just add up the 4 different sub-grants, then you get your total allocation. And this is the total allocation is what then gets populated in into Nexus. Whew, okay, so sorry, I just like rambled on for a long time. But I do think that this stuff is important to know about, just so that you can understand for yourself why you get the kind of allocation that you do and why some other districts get allocations that are different from yours. And I do think that it's important to be able to explain that to other people like superintendents or school boards or finance directors and that sort of thing. So I'm going to just kind of pause there and just to point out a couple other pieces here. Here's the video that I go into about how that works. It's not that long. It does a little bit of a better job than I just did right now explaining it. And then there's some additional funding detail. So I said that it's not like a straight math problem for some of this stuff. This piece where it talks, this link is from MDE and it talks a little bit more detail about some of those funding pieces. So you're welcome to check out either one of those things. And I do have the MDE program allocations page linked here that that was where I got our Title I numbers from. So I wanted to pause there, 1, to see if there's anything that anybody would like to add to what I just talked about, and then 2, to see if there's any questions about that, or about maybe what you're supposed to do with that census memo data. Well, I suppose if there's one way to put a group to sleep, it's to talk about Title I allocation. So I'll go with everybody's ready to move on to the next topic. So wanted to real quickly just remind everybody about what the building level Title I requirements are. We all, at this meeting, a lot of times we talk more about funding and the consolidated application and getting things approved, that sort of thing. But I just want to remind everybody that there are building level responsibilities. And earlier in the year, we did talk about the Title I parent meeting. That's something that's supposed to be held. I think the actual language is early in the year. So usually maybe around October-ish is when we talk about holding that annual Title I parent meeting. And the purpose of that Title I parent meeting is to get input on your Title I plan and your parental involvement plan. So a lot of times people try to tie that to some other activities to get some involvement. But the main reason that you're holding that parent meeting is to inform them about what Title I is, but also to get input on your plan and your around your Title I plan and your parental involvement plan. I do have some links in here about your Title I plan and your parental involvement plan. So every year, the building really should review and update your Title I plan. The Title I plan used to be divided into a targeted assistance plan or a school-wide plan, and they were both kind of different. And it was a really long process. And Shelley and some of her colleagues were able to significantly shorten that document up, and it's just in one document now. So whether you're target assistance or school-wide, it's all in one document. I have it linked here. I'll just pop it open real quick. And so every building should have this completed, and it's supposed to be communicated and available. And so the easiest way to do that is just to put it up on your transparency link every year. That's what I encourage all the schools that I work with to do. So each year your team should take a look at this, make sure that it's still updated. If you've made changes to your parental involvement plan, you'll need to connect that here. A lot of it is just assurances. There are a few narratives that you need to fill out, and especially the ones where you're describing how your Title I program works. Sometimes that changes year to year. And so you should really get in and make sure that it's accurate. So every year, this is something that you should take a look at. You may not have big changes to it, but you should always go in and take a look and see if there's anything to update. The other piece is around parental involvement plans. I'm not really going to go into that very much. I'm doing a session on this on March 22nd at our MAISD Professional Learning Institute. I'm going to be going into what this is, how to fill it out, what it's for. And I have some folks from Orchard View are going to be there, and they're going to give a practical example of what they did with their staff and their parents to get that completed. So if you're not real familiar with it, I do have a couple of example documents there. But it is a requirement to have a parental involvement plan. It's a requirement that you review that at your Title I parent meeting. And I also recommend having that document posted up on your district transparency site. And that is supposed to be reviewed and updated every year. So I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions about some of those building level Title I requirements, or if anybody has anything to add. All right, hearing none. Thank you, Pam. I'm going to go ahead and I want to talk about paraprofessional requirements in Title I buildings. So I was holding a PD with some districts recently, and we were actually talking about their Title I plans. And one of the items in the Title I plans that you have to check an assurance on is are all of the paraprofessionals in your Title I building highly qualified? And so we got into this conversation around like, well, what does it mean? And why do they have to be highly qualified? And do all of them have to be highly qualified? What if they do this? What if they do that? And so we got into this kind of big conversation. And so I actually did some research on this a few years ago. So this is from November of 2021, but it is still, it's still accurate. So I did had a couple of questions that came out of it, and I did call and I talked to Shelley and talked through a couple of different scenarios with Shelley. But if you are really interested in all of the legislative references and all that kind of stuff, they're all in here. I'm going to try to give the Cliff Notes version of it. If you are a school-wide building, a school-wide Title I building, then anybody that is in your building that's instructional, any paraprofessionals that are instructional need to be highly qualified. So that means that they have the associate's degree, they have a certain amount of credits, they took the assessment they need to take. They need to be highly qualified if they have any kind of instructional capacity in the building. And so one of the questions that came up is, well, if somebody is a behavior support, is that instructional? The answer is yes. So if somebody is there in a behavioral support capacity, so they're there to implement a behavior plan, to redirect, to make visual schedules, to help kids follow visual schedules, all that kind of stuff, that's considered instructional. And so the thing is about this Title I school-wide is, even if they are not funded out of Title I, they have to be highly qualified. So if you are a school-wide building, anybody that's in the building, any paraprofessional that's there in an instructional capacity has to be highly qualified. So food service people, not there in an instructional capacity, right? So recess supervisors, not there in an instructional capacity. So they can meet whatever the requirements are for your ISD for that. A lot of times it's high school diploma. The one situation where you can have somebody that may be in a support capacity, like a paraprofessional type capacity, where they don't have to be highly qualified, is for if they're there for healthcare needs. So if you have somebody that's there that they literally do tube feeding or catheterization, diapering, wheelchair transfers, stuff like that, and that's their only capacity, they do not need to be highly qualified. So that's a school-wide building. If you're a targeted assistance building, if whoever is there is funded in any way out of Title I, then they need to be highly qualified. So if they're split funded, if they're fully funded, then they need to meet those highly qualified pieces. If they are not, they do not need to meet the highly qualified situation. And obviously, if you're not a Title I building, then none of these requirements also apply. So that's it in a nutshell. I tried to capture it all in this one-page document. I tried to link out to all of the direct language out of ESEA and also some non-regulatory guidance that came out through the US Ed about this.
Dave, can I ask a question, maybe more directed to Shelley?
Yes.
So let's just say we put a posting up, and for the amount of money that we're paying for an ECSE classroom aid, which under this would be considered instructional, we don't get an applicant. How long do we have to leave it posted and opened before we can interview people that don't have an associate's? Right now, I'm just going to hypothetically and honestly say we filled them, and we're letting people attempt to pass the test, and they may not have passed it the first time, so they're rescheduling. I'm just asking that, I mean, they're working with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds.
Yep. Yeah, so actually, Shelley and I did talk about this, so go for it, Shelley.
Well, no, I don't know if there's an actual time frame. Okay, so I don't know what to tell you. It's like, oh, it has to be posted for a whole year or 6 months, or I just know that our office, our management has given us permission to sometimes give you permission that if you have posted it for a reasonable amount of time and you're unable to get someone who is already meeting the highly qualified standards, you can hire someone that has as many standards as possible to provide that service, knowing that they're either working towards passing that test or you're still working towards getting someone who is highly qualified. What else did I say, David, when we talked? I can't remember, but I don't know if there's a time frame necessarily. Dave, what else did I say? I don't know.
So I think maybe the only thing to add to that was, so I said, well, okay, so you have it posted and, you've never taken the posting down. You're actively trying to find these people. Now it's the end of the year. You still don't have anybody. And this person's wondering if they have a job next year. That was another thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
Spot on. That's
Yeah.
what we're asking.
Right.
And I don't think I know the answer to that, to be completely honest with you. We've been trying to be as flexible as possible, knowing what the law says, that they're supposed to be highly qualified, but also knowing that we're struggling to find enough qualified staff across the state. So we want children to be served, but we don't want people's first reaction just to be, I'm going to hire whoever I want because that's easier. We need you to try to either train within, find someone who's willing to go towards getting highly qualified, or pass the test. And I think if you make a conscious effort in there, you're going to be okay. But I would just work with your consultant on individual situations, and we'll ensure that it's reasonable and that what you're doing is working towards getting someone that is highly qualified.
Or helping that person that's in there get highly qualified, right?
Yes, yes, yep.
Allison, does that get you pointed in as the direction as we can do right this minute?
The direction we've been following, yes. I appreciate it. Thanks.
So, I mean, it sounds to me that you've made a concerted effort to fill the position with somebody that is highly qualified. And for the people that are there, you've been working with them to try to get them highly qualified. So it seems like to me that you are doing the things that you need to be doing, and probably just continue to be in good conversation with Shelley about that would be the best bet. Any other questions or thoughts around paraprofessional requirements? Okay, so earlier there was a question around electronic signature policies, and so this is a real thing. It came up, I think it may have came up even at our last meeting, that that someone had a fiscal audit recently, and they asked for their electronic signature policy. They didn't have one, and so their change required was that they needed one. But basically what they're saying is, if you don't have that policy in place, that any kind of electronic signatures that you have are invalid. And so I tried to find some electronic signature policies. I was not able to find any, and so I made one. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that open now. And so this is a policy that I made. And basically what it is, it's kind of a blanket policy that you put into place, or I should say procedure, a blanket procedure. It's not a policy. A blanket procedure that you can put in place that just kind of talks about the different sorts of electronic signatures that you might use. And then you kind of go in and you have to edit it a little bit to say what you're actually doing, but it should get you possibly pointed in the right direction. And so basically the way that I wrote it was it kind of just broke up into a couple of different things. You might do this, you might have legal things that need legal signatures on that are going to be binding contracts and those sorts of things. So there's usually products that do that sort of thing. Our ISD uses Adobe Sign, but there's just Sign. There's all kinds of things out there that you can use for that sort of thing. But you might just want to, I'm sure that your organization uses something like that to collect those legally binding contractual type signatures. But then it kind of gets into more of like the on-site review stuff, like where you're like, okay, we want to have sign-in sheets for all of your meetings. Well, we're having a lot of online meetings like today. And so our sign-in for today was that we put an X in here indicating that we're here on this date. So this policy actually indicates that you could use an X as your electronic signature saying that you signed in for a meeting. And so that's the sort of thing where it's for purposes of participation or acknowledgement, right? And so I kind of talk about those two different situations, and then I get that in there. Hopefully that covers fiscal stuff, but also program stuff. So I did get, I used 2 regulatory references to make this document. And so you can see what those are here. So this is the best thing that exists right now, because I haven't seen anything else. But if anybody has anything else that they'd like to send me, I'd be glad to put it in as another example. If you get through an on-site review or a fiscal audit and they ask for it, and you get feedback on this that need to make changes, please let me know. So that is our written process for that. I said policy, I'm changing this to process. There we go.
And currently, this would not be asked for during an on-site review for programs. This would be something that would be discussed during your fiscal monitoring from our office, just so you know.
Okay. My computer is not cooperating right now. Just want to let everybody know that I did get this from the Written Process Collaborative. I will not go into this, but the Written Process Collaborative has all kinds of stuff in it. And so like I came in here and I just typed electronic. And when I typed that up, it popped up with our electronic signatures written procedure. So if you're wondering about written procedures for anything else, you can pop over there and see if if a sample one exists. All right, I'm sorry, I cannot remember who asked about. Oh, it's Hillary. Troon does not include a policy around this. So it really is just an administrative guideline. Oh, procedure, not a policy. Yes, yes. So your board will have policies. They're also going to have administrative guidelines, and this is just a written procedure. And that was specifically what was asked for when I created that. That was what was asked for by the fiscal office. They said, "What's your written procedure for this?" And so yeah, so I wouldn't surprise me if Troon and everybody else starts coming out with policy around this pretty soon. I think that as we kind of get more into that. So Hillary did that. Do you think that this got you pointing in the right direction in that question that you had?
Yeah, that's perfect. We just didn't know if we needed our board to adopt a formal policy. We're going through Troon right now and we didn't see it in there. So no, this is perfect. Thank you, David.
All right, you got it. All right, I just have a few more things to talk about. The MyKIP and Title I stuff was kind of the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about today. So just wanted to get into a couple of things, more reminders than anything else. Wanted to let everybody know about some MAS FPS PDs that is coming up. And I'll give my full disclosure that I am the professional learning chair of MAS FPS and about to become the president of MAS FPS. So I don't know, maybe this is an advertisement. But I do think that it's very applicable for everybody. So time and effort, I'm going to be holding a virtual PD around time and effort. And that's going to be with Andrea Rogers, who is on team 2 for OES, and also Shua Vang, who is the manager of the fiscal unit for OES. So these are the people that we're going to be asking you for your time and effort stuff. And we're doing a co-presentation around time and effort. It's just an hour. It's on March 20th. And so I have the registration link there. You do have to be, it is free, but you do have to be a member of MAS FPS. So if you're not a member of MAS FPS, it's just $85 to join. So so that PD is going to be pretty good. It's already has over 100 people signed up for that. So that is coming up. I know that that's something that is often on people's minds, is how do you do your time and effort? So that's PD that's coming up. And then we do have our face-to-face Professional Learning Institute. The last couple of years, we've been mostly virtual. We were able to go back in person last year for 2 days. And so we kind of kept that this year. We had our Professional Learning Institute was virtual for 5 sessions, but we are doing our face-to-face on the 17th and 18th. Just wanted to quickly go over what is going to be covered on those 2 days. So on the 17th, it is kind of more of the afternoon into the evening. And we are getting ESSER updates from Kevin Walters. So Kevin was there last year and did this at the same time from 2 to 4. And it is high quality stuff straight from the people that are approving ESSER plans and approving the way that the dollars are spent. So I really recommend coming to that session or having somebody from the district that is in charge of that sort of thing coming to that session with Kevin Walters, 2 to 4. We do have a little meet and greet, and then there's a sponsor reception that night. So it's kind of a good night to come in, get some professional learning, get checked into the hotel, be able to do some networking, that sort of thing. It says snacks here, but they're pretty good. When it comes to food, you know, it's pretty good. It's almost dinnery, but it's good. Sorry, I'm really food motivated. So like when I see the word snacks, it's a little bit, it's better than just snacks. Then we have on the 18th, we have the federal updates with Tiffany's going to be here this year. Last year we had Bonnie was there from Brewstein and Manasavit. Brewstein and Manasavit is the Washington, D.C. lawyers that cover all of the federal program stuff. It's always a super high quality presentation. And then after lunch, we do have 3 breakout sessions. So the state grants roundup is going to be one of them, and that is where we're going to get into a lot of detail about all of the 98s, all of the 35s, all the 31s, like 31 AA, 98C, 98 at like all of that soup sandwich that's kind of come out in the last few years, because of all the ESSER dollars and the ways that the state can use some of those ESSER dollars to fund these state grants. So we're having a big state grants roundup. Kevin Walters is going to help with that. Scott Hutchins is going to help with that. And then several of us are going to be there as well. And we're working on a resource that's going to help us dig into that. We'll answer questions like, any idea when the 98C grant awards will be coming from Hillary? So let me look into that. I might have an answer for you, but we're going to be covering all that kind of stuff in that state grants roundup. There's going to be a breakout specifically around the interaction of Title I and homeless. And so our new MDE homeless consultant, Irma Lopez, is going to be there. We're also going to have our EL consultant, Kelly Alvarez, is going to be there. So that is breakout number 2. And then breakout number 3, which I'm really excited about. I've been working with the research team from Epic MSU. So they're the ones that do a lot of research for MDE. And they did a lot of research over the pandemic. In fact, using some of the data that was collected through the 94 or 98, no, I can't, my numbers are all messed up. Through 98B104H, a lot of the data that was collected there, they analyzed a lot of that data. And then they also did a lot of qualitative research work with districts that came out of the pandemic in a better position than what they entered the pandemic in. And so they're going to share a lot of that research and have a lot of practical takeaways out of that. So 3 really great breakout sessions that afternoon. So I really recommend coming to that. MASFPS is the place to get PD about all the things that we're talking about today. So I do have the registration information there if you're interested in going to either one of those. Spring workshops. I do have details for the spring workshop that's going to be offered here on the west side of the state. We are going to have that here at Muskegon Area Career Tech Center. So if you've been here before, it's just a little bit north of the MAISD. So that is on May 19th, and we are planning on the full day for now. We don't have all the details worked out on that, but there's probably going to be like a half day that's really focused just on like how to do everything in Nexus, because Nexus is going to be, we're not going to have Megs Plus this year. It's all going to be in Nexus, right, Shelley?
Yes, that is what we're working towards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're thinking that a whole half of the day is just going to be like literally instruction and technical assistance about how to do all those things. And then the other half of the day is the sort of thing that is normally at the spring workshop. So all of just, all of the reminders and new information and new details and all that kind of stuff. So we're thinking that's probably going to be a whole day. There will be face-to-face locations advertised around the state. I think Shelley has some of those worked out for at least region 2, but I don't know about other regions. And then last year there were some statewide virtual options, and anybody's available to, you can come to any location that you want. You don't have to just stick in your region or those sorts of things.
Yeah, so management is working on this right now, and I'm not sure if there's going to be a virtual option again or not this year. If you remember last year, we recorded it and those ended up on the website. My hope is that's going to happen again. And yes, once all of the teams have decided on their dates and locations, that information will also be shared on the website. And yes, David is correct. You can attend anyone across the state that you want. I've had people that have been on vacation and things like that have gone to other places across the state, and that's fine. But it is going to be important, especially with Nexus. Everything is going to be in Nexus, and we really need to spend some time on that and any normal updates that we would have. So we'll give you more information as soon as we have it.
Just 2 other things on my list. One is just a quick check-in around 98B104H. So that is all of that kind of parallel local assessment accountability system that was put in place during COVID that's still here. So there was an article in the spotlight that might have flown under the radar for some. And it's just kind of about the funding for the 104H. So that was your assessment reimbursement. And so I would just encourage you, if you've had some trouble getting that funding through and approved and applied and all that kind of stuff, read this article, and then there's an email contact in here if you're still having problems with that. So I don't have to do that reporting anymore, so I can't give you further details on that, but I just saw that and I thought I would copy that in here. And for our end of the year reporting, the data hub has been trying to make some reports that you can go in and you can download these spreadsheets out of the data hub, where it kind of compiles all of your data and sets it up for some of the reporting. I have not personally been successful in being able to make that work for any of the districts that I work with. But I am going to keep my hopes up that maybe by the end of the year this year, I can get that to work for one of our districts. Has anybody used the data hub to pull their compiled reports and use that for your 98D reporting to your school boards and to post your progress reports and get those posted on your web pages? Has anybody used that successfully? Hillary, when you pulled those reports to review, did they did it work?
Actually, yeah, it did. And, I used a different template, but what was nice was there was one report that, because we use NWEA, so it pulled it right through, but one of the reports, it was how many students at each grade level were significantly below grade level. So, and it, so there are a couple of reports in there that just for informational purposes, I just looked at. I didn't share it with the board because we had our own template, but they're in there.
Yep. Okay. Well, it's nice to know that it worked for somebody, because I haven't been able to get it to work yet. And I usually feel like I could get stuff like that to work. So, all right. Okay. The last thing on my list is just a couple of things about My School Data. If you're a secure user, so like you can log into My School Data, most people don't have to do that because most of the information is all publicly available. But if you are a secure user and you use your My School Data login, there's a survey that My School Data is putting out right now. They had to extend the survey timeframe a little bit because they didn't get a lot of response. So I'm just trying to communicate that out a couple of different ways. So if you are a My School Data secure user, if you could take that survey that's linked in there, they would appreciate that. And they do put out talking points about My School Data on a monthly basis. And so I just linked in the most recent issue of that for anybody that wanted to peruse that 2-pager. So that was everything that was on my list. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording and just see if there's any hot topics anybody wants to talk about.
I keep